Waiters. What's the worst first date you've ever seen? Okay, so I've been a bartender and a waiter over the years, and I've witnessed a couple of really sad moments, a couple of bizarre ones, and one that was just ruthless. This one, though, was the best of them all. A good-looking dude, fit, clean-shaven, kind of looked like Jim Cantore from the Weather Channel, but younger and slimmer. He was sitting at the bar going on about how he had a date with this girl that his best friend was crushing on hard. His friend just refused to ask her out because she was into him instead. He was really getting into his story when she walked in, and he froze up like someone stunned him. By anyone's standards, she was gorgeous, owning it in a little black dress and high heels. Anyway, she comes up and they do a little greeting. She orders a tequila with a lime. He does one with her, and they banter about getting that one out of the way and move into a little more banter. Out of the blue, this dude whistles at me. I was shocked, honestly, as the bar was pretty empty. He whistles at me again while I'm looking at him, trying to figure out if he really just whistled at me like a pet. Yo man, more drinks. Disappointed, as he really kind of seemed like a nice guy, I went to pour him a drink and let him know I'm not a pet and that he does not need to whistle to get a drink. Sure, man, no worries, just keep an eye out. We're going to get hammered, yo. I retreat to the sidebar real quick, and one of the other guys working that night starts to talk to him while the girl goes to the ladies' room. When she gets back, he whistles at the other bartender again and shouts, "Hey man, where are my drinks? Pronto." This guy starts just hammering drinks. Not crazy, but pretty damn quick as he's through at least 5. The girl only did the one and is sitting there sipping it like a win. The dude, who we will now call Yo, starts to get a bit sideways. Nothing big, just loud, laughing at his own jokes and talking over the girl every chance he gets. He then announces that he has to take a leak on a rock and walks to the back. The girl looks mortified and sad. She's texting away furiously. Then I hear him in the back raising some cane, and out he comes with a dude under his arm. They sit down and he starts talking to a different girl at the bar. He's not really hammered, but well on his way, and says something out loud to the other girl and walks outside. His friend follows quickly after, and the girl is left at the bar alone. 5 minutes later, the friend walks in, sits down, and has a drink with the girl. I hear him say that he put him in an Uber and sent him home. They walk to go to the place the other dude had reservations for them at. I honestly thought, good for you, dude. About 30 minutes later, Yo Boy walks back in, sober as the day he was born. He sits down, waves me over, and apologizes for whistling at me, gives us $20 and buys us a drink for when we get off. I was off at this point and sat down to have mine with him. He lets me in on his game. He did it all for his friend. Got half buzzed, played the fool, and called his friend to come save the day. He honestly said, he's a better man for her than me. She's really just not my type. I was stuck between awe and impressed. They all came in about a month later, looking all buddy-buddy, the trio of them. That Yo guy went from potentially ruining the night to redeeming himself in an unimaginable way. His dedication to his friend's happiness, even at his own expense, shows true character. Plus, who doesn't love a happy ending where everyone ends up friends? Story 2. My brother's girlfriend set me up on a blind date with her friend who, in her words, totally digs heavy guys. So I go to pick her up and my alarms go off. Well, she's not a 9 out of 10, she's definitely what most would consider out of my league. I try to talk to her on the ride. At most, I get single-word responses. We get to the place to eat, a steakhouse that's noted in my area for being nice but not super expensive, and we get our table. We order our food. While waiting, I try to engage her in a conversation. Simple things like asking if she's from around here or if she has any hobbies. She just taps on her phone and gives me mostly 2-word answers. When our food arrives, she picks up her plate and heads to a completely different table, saying her friend showed up. I, apparently, was not invited. Meanwhile, she's sitting at this other table with quite a bit of expensive food. I blink for a moment and call the waiter over and explain the situation. I request separate checks. He agrees and I go ahead and pay for my own food. She starts ordering drinks, not just for herself but for all of her friends. I finish what I can of my food. About an hour later, she comes back over and says she's ready to leave. I wave the waiter down and inform him that she's ready to go. He brings her a check for well over $100. She just smiles, looks at me, and pushes the check towards me, explaining that I was paying. I push it back and firmly tell her that I'm not paying for her friends' expenses. I get up, smile at her, and say, "I've had a lovely time tonight. I hope you have a good time paying your tab and finding a ride home that doesn't involve the police." My brother's girlfriend started blowing up my phone an hour later, furious about how I could treat her friend that way. So, to whoever that waiter was, you're the man. Keep the $20 tip. Story 3. My bar has 2 floors, and on this night I was working upstairs. A couple came up with drinks they had already bought and sat in my section. I went to introduce myself. The girl seemed nice, but the guy said nothing, just stared at his drink. They eventually ordered another round, and as I was dropping off the drinks, I heard the guy slur out, "Thank you very much." It was just a drink away. Nothing too strong, but it would be his last round. I continued with my duties for a while. At one point, I glanced up at the table. The girl was gone, and the guy looked like hell. I thought to myself, oh, he looks like he's about to. And right then, he hurled. Not much came out, and he tried to pass it off as a cough, but I saw enough pour out onto his chair and the floor. I grabbed my assistant and the trash can. The assistant got to work on the mess, and I put the trash can in the front of the guy. I told him to go to the bathroom, take the can with him on his way out, and then get out. He said nothing, just stared at his phone for a minute, then got up and left. I hurried around looking for his date. I found her at the bar trying to pay her tab. I tapped her on the shoulder and tried to tell her about her date, but when she turned around, her face told me everything. That's when she told me it was their first date. They had met through a mutual friend and she really didn't know him at all. My bartender and one of our awesome regulars overheard. We paid her tab. She ended up staying at the bar, hanging out for a while as the regular brought her more drinks. Story 4. I'm not a waiter, but a bartender in a college town. This happened last Wednesday. It was a slower night when a guy and a girl sat down at the bar. Clearly, they weren't students at the school I attend. I checked their IDs. It was the guy's 21st birthday. I offered them a discounted round and had a drink with him. They seemed like nice people. It turned out they were from a small town near mine, staying with friends in town for the night. They bought a few rounds and we made small talk, the usual routine. The girl kept eyeing me, and I got the sense that she was into me. I kept my distance to avoid ruining this guy's birthday, but as she got buzzed, she called me over more often for no reason other than to blatantly flirt in front of him. He couldn't stop glaring at me, which was understandable. The guy went to the bathroom. While he was gone, she asked if I could come out from behind the bar. I said yes, depending on the scenario. She then asked if I could take a picture of her in front of the famous mural on the wall. I agreed, and walked with her across the dance floor. She posed next to the sign. I snapped a couple of pictures, and just as I was about to hand her phone back, the guy came walking out of the bathroom. She looked at him and said something like, "Oh good, could you take a picture of us in front of the sign?" He reluctantly obliged, and she wrapped her arms around me in the most uncomfortable, girlfriend-boyfriend-like manner she could manage, and I stood there like a prop. I felt terrible for the guy at this point. A little while later, they were back at the bar. She called me over and started telling me about her ex, and how posting a picture to social media of her with an attractive guy would definitely make him jealous. The guy literally started crying and walked back to the bathroom. I walked away to talk to my bouncer just to let him know what was going on in case things got out of hand. The guy came out of the bathroom sobbing, doing his best to hide it. She saw him and realized he was upset but seemed to have no idea why. She asked if he wanted to leave. He nodded. As they were getting their coats on, she looked at me and asked what time I got off and if I had a napkin and a pen. I was shocked. I said I'd be late and had to study. She grabbed a pen and napkin from the customers next to her and left her number with a heart anyway, all while this poor guy was standing there waiting for her. Then she pulled out her phone, opened Facebook, and started asking me to add her as a friend so she could tag me. I told her that given the situation and the fact that we had just met, I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate. She seemed not to hear me. She stood there for another couple of minutes, then showed me her phone, the picture of us, and her profile with a caption, "Upgraded," implying that she and I were dating and I was a step up from her ex. She showed it to the poor guy and asked if he thought we looked cute in the picture. The guy was holding back tears as best as he could. I told her that I thought the picture was inappropriate and misleading and that it would be best if she took it down. She flipped out and immediately started yelling at me from across the bar. The guy was literally sobbing in the bar top at this point, while his date was 2 feet away from him. A bouncer came and took her outside, putting her in a cab. I apologized repeatedly to the poor guy, picked up his tab, and gave him some free passes to skip the line on busier nights. He said he'd had a rough time lately and was hoping his 21st would be a change for the better. I can't imagine looking back on your 21st for the rest of your life and thinking of a night like that. I still don't know if the girl was a mean person or just incredibly oblivious. Probably a little of both. That poor guy didn't deserve any of that drama on his 21st. By the way, if you're finding this story as wild as I am, remember to hit that subscribe button and give the post a thumbs up for more content like this. Story 5. I used to work as a barman in a pub in Hertfordshire. So this Indian guy's at the bar telling me how he's meeting his date for the first time and that she's also bringing her parents. Possibly some tradition. Anyway, I'm chatting to him as he's waiting for the girl and her family to arrive. After about 10 minutes or so, they do arrive and are all seated at a table nearby the bar. I noticed throughout the evening how much he's seemingly making the family laugh and how well they seem to be getting along. Now the fun begins. After dessert, the mother and father of the girl go to the garden outside, leaving the couple alone. After a moment or two, the man comes up to the bar and, with a cheeky smile on his face, asks to pay the bill. Without hesitation, I process the transaction and congratulate him on how well his date appeared to go. He returns to his table and takes a seat. The girl's parents now return from the garden with glowing smiles and rejoin the table. I notice again how they all appear to be chatting and laughing until, suddenly, The man shows the receipt for the meal. The mood changes instantly. The glowing smiles are replaced with frowns. The girl's father stands up and says, "How dare you disrespect my family like this?" The man then apologizes in silence to the father, to which he replies, "You will never see my daughter again." Following this, the father picks up his coat and turns to leave, demanding his wife and daughter to leave with him. The wife stands up and immediately follows him out of the door. The girl hesitates, half rising from her chair, and then decides to remain with the man, where she now bursts into tears. The man was clearly overwhelmed with embarrassment and shock, not knowing what to do or how to react, so he proceeded to pat her on the top of her head. After around half an hour or so of her crying, she eventually stops and decides to call a taxi to go home, explaining, "I'm sorry, but I have to go with my family." The man, clearly disheartened at this point, reluctantly agrees and calls a cab for her. Now fast forward about 3 hours to when I finish my shift. I leave the pub and walk to my car in the car park. At this point, I notice a dark figure sitting on a bench near my car. I felt nervous trying to figure out the person sitting in front of me. Only when I'm around 10 meters away do I notice it's the man from the date. He was bawling his eyes out. Turns out his date was now locked out of her house for the night, as the parents were clearly distraught with her. And when the parents had left, they had ruined the poor guy's tires so he couldn't even drive home. Talk about a day gone wrong. All over paying the bill. Story 6. I work at a nice Italian restaurant that gets busy. One night, a man I wasn't even serving approached me while I was entering an order in the computer. He handed me $20 and a napkin with a phone number on it. He said, "I'm on the worst date ever. This woman is awful, and I need to get out. Take this $20 and find a phone and call me. Tell me you have to come home immediately. Any excuse will do. I just have to get out of here." At first, I thought he was joking. But 2 minutes later, his server came up to me and confirmed how difficult the woman was and that he could see the man didn't want to be there. As soon as I could, I called him and told him my car had broken down and I needed a ride. I never spoke to the difficult woman directly. According to her server, she was just very rude and unpleasant. It remains one of my proudest moments as server. Story 7. My first job was as a waiter. There was an attractive young woman and an average-looking man. First off, these people were around 30, and I have no clue why they decided to go to Applebee's for dinner. The guy was wearing plaid sleeve pants and an oversized red zip-up Columbia jacket. The woman was dressed more nicely, but it was still casual. Everything went smoothly until it was time for entrees. The guy orders a large amount of ribs and denies the girl her original order of a house sirloin, which was only about $6, less than a fifth of his order. The man orders a $4 salad and water for her. The woman stops talking completely, while the man talks about some crazy party he went to. He gulps down a few strawberry quencher iced teas, says, "See you Friday, sweetheart," and leaves her with a bill. She said the guy seemed nice when they talked on Tinder, but was very uncomfortable with him in real life and afraid to say something. A coworker and I paid for her meal, and later she and that same coworker started dating. They're now engaged. Story 8. It was one of my first dates, and right from the start, things were awkward. I was a junior in high school, excited to take out a senior I'd been flirting with for months, but as soon as she got in the car, she got a call that changed everything. Her close friend had passed away from a brain aneurysm earlier that day. I offered to cancel our plans and take her home, but she insisted we go on. We ended up at a restaurant where she cried quietly at the table. I hardly spoke, just asking if she was okay now and then while she texted her friends or struggled to speak through her tears. The waiter noticed their situation and acted kindly. He served us quickly and discreetly, easing the tension. Story 9. Back in high school, my older sister, who was in college, took me to a concert one evening. We got there early and found seats behind a guy and a girl who were clearly on the first date. Their conversation started off okay, but soon turned awkward. Like they didn't know what to say to each other. It got so bad that they started talking about the weather, of all things. It was pretty awkward to watch. Now, my sister and I, being the mischievous types, couldn't resist making fun of them quietly to each other. We started mimicking their awkward small talk, trying to hold back our giggles. After a few minutes of this, the guy must have sensed something because he turned halfway around, his face looking desperate. It was like he was silently pleading with us, "Please, don't make this any worse for me." Feeling a bit guilty, we stopped and just watched the concert quietly after that. A few weeks later, my sister came home excited from a party. She told me something that blew my mind. "Remember that guy who teased at the concert? Well, I just met him at the party, and guess what? We're going out on a date." And that's how it started. They ended up falling in love, getting married, and now they have 4 kids together. It goes to show you never know where a little awkwardness and teasing might lead you in life. I can't imagine how awkward it must have been for that guy. But hey, looks like they both inadvertently played matchmakers. That's the best How I Met Your Mother story I've ever heard. Story 10. I work at a country club that is steeped in old money. leveraging it to generate even more wealth. Membership fees here exceed the cost of a year at my university. To say money's not an issue would be an understatement. Recently, I was serving a young couple and the power dynamics were striking. She was the daughter of a board member and was known by all staff for her substantial club account. The gentleman, on the other hand, wasn't a member and looked very bit like a typical broke college student. He was dressed plainly but neatly, while she was impeccably dressed in the latest fashion. The date seemed to progress smoothly enough, with nothing out of the ordinary, until she quickly left the table before I had a chance to bring out the bill. I took the bill to the counter. It totaled well over $300 for food and drinks, all items she had insisted on ordering. 2 bottles of top-shelf wine and 2 steaks. When he slowly reached for his wallet and began tearing up, apologizing that he wouldn't be able to leave a tip, I was taken aback. I've never had a customer cry over not being able to tip before. He went on to explain that he was also a server and that she didn't know he wasn't wealthy. She left because he had mentioned his scholarship. It was heartbreaking. I kindly reminded him that at this country club, we only accept credit cards or charge to accounts, not cash. Thus, her father received a hefty bill, and rest assured, he left a generous tip in her name. It was incredibly satisfying. Lest I heard her father had removed her privileges, I can't help but smile at the life lessons she's learned, like the value of working for the things you want, including dates. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.